it's Ravon from Luv Lola. Welcome to my channel.
What's up, everyone? I am super excited to be getting started on this tutorial. So let's go ahead and jump into it. I have got all of my pieces laid out here for you. I have already done my interfacing and installed my hardware just to get things moving. Okay, so I just want to say really quick that I decided to use vinyl for my lining. If you do not have an industrial, I do not do that. But I like the stability of having lining in vinyl for my smaller bags. So that's what I did. This is my divider piece. I'm showing you that I went ahead and added Decaville Heavy to the entire thing. The instructions do it a little bit different. We'll go over how she did it later, but I did interface my entire divider because I like my divider pockets to be stiff and not move around too much. Okay, so for my exterior pieces, like I said, I did interface with Decaville Heavy. Now, when I did my interfacing, what I did was I measured down 3/8 of an inch, and that's where I placed my interfacing. Once I had everything fused on, I measured down 3/4 of an inch and drew a line, and we're going to be drawing that line on all of our exterior pieces and our lining, and that's because this is a drop-in. We're going to be folding it down later to that line, so I like to get it done in the beginning. Above that line at the 3/4 inch, go ahead and add double-sided tape. It's just going to make things easier, and so that we're ready to go later. Okay, right now I'm showing you where you're going to be placing your magnetic snaps. That's the measurement. Go ahead and give it a pause so you can see that and get those magnetic snaps installed. Please note that each side is going to get one female and one male snap. All right, we need them to match up so they can kiss. All right, so that's just me letting you know that each side is going to get a male and a female. All right, now I went ahead and got my feet added to my bottom base because I like to get this stuff done early. Again, if you need to pause it so you can get those measurements, go ahead and do that. Now we're going to move on to the stud panels. Guys, I keep it moving. You can always pause these videos. I don't like a long video, so yeah. Right now, I'm just going to show you. I went ahead and made one of those top pieces so you can see what it looks like. I know that it helps me to have a visual. So that piece in the middle, that's the top panel, and those two pieces sticking out the side, those are the stud panels. Okay, there's 4 stud panels. We're about to make those right now. The stud panel is where we're going to be installing the stud, or we're going to be making a hole. So grab your stud panel, and you're going to be drawing a line down the center long way. Okay, right down the center. Once you've got that line drawn, we are going to apply double-sided tape along the top and the bottom. You don't have to do tape if you don't want to. It just makes it faster, but you can just clip it. Not a problem. Now we're going to be folding down to those lines. Okay, and once we've got it folded down to those lines, don't add a top stitch yet. I did that the first time. I was moving too fast. We're going to grab it and we're going to place it so that the wrong sides are touching, all right? Bam. I went ahead and put a clamp on the end just to hold it in place, and then we're going to top stitch around the entire thing at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I really like the way that she did this. Tobi, it's good stuff. This is such a fun bag to make just because a lot of it I've never done before. So that's always fun, right? When you're not just going through the motions, you're learning something new. So I really did enjoy making this bag. I hope that you enjoyed as well. All right, so we've got that stitched. And what I did was I went ahead and did all 4 of mine at the same time. So you can be doing that right now, making the other 3 of these stud panels. Now we're going to work on that top panel. She gave you some interfacing to put on. Once you've got that interfaced centered on, you're going to grab one of the short raw edges and you're going to just fold it in to that interfacing. Again, she did give you an interfacing template. So you place that on and then you're going to fold this in to that interfacing. Now we're going to add a top stitch along the edges, top stitch along the edges at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right. Go ahead and hit up both sides. Now, again, there's going to be 2 of these top panels, so I like to do both of them at the same time. Now we're going to add the magnetic snaps to the top panel. Here are the measurements for where you're going to be adding those snaps. Measure 3/4 of an inch from one short edge and then 1 inch from the long edge. You can see that I put some Decaville heavy in the middle just because I always like to have a stabilizer behind my hardware. I drew the line on the top and the bottom on the from the long edge, but it really just only needs to be on one edge. Now, when we add the magnetic snaps to this, it's going to be 2 of the same gender snaps, okay? So one panel is going to have 2 of the male. The other panel is going to have 2 of the female. All right? See, that one has 2 male. So that means this other one is going to have 2 female because we need them to be able to snap together. I'm just letting that sink in for you, you know. Awkward moment, silence. Okay. Right now, I'm just getting my magnetic snaps installed. Yeah. There we go. And we already have interfacing underneath that, so we're good. Okay, so I've installed my magnetic snaps. Now we're going to get those 2 stud panels added. Here's the measurement where we're going to add it. 2 3/4 of an inch from the short edge and 3/4 of an inch from the long edge. And we're going to be doing that from both sides, okay? All right, and I used double-sided tape to just help that little piece stay on there while I'm sewing it. You can do the same. I've got my double-sided tape on. I'm struggling to get the backing off. Okay, I've got it off, and now I'm just going to place one of those studs right there at the top of that mark that we made. All right, and we're going to do the same thing to the opposite side. Now we're going to be adding 2 little top stitches to each one. The first stitch is going to be 1/8 of an inch and the second one is 1/4 of an inch. Now, I highly recommend that you use thread that matches your top panel because it is going to show. Yes, it's on the inside of your bag, but it is going to show. So just be aware of that. Again, just repeat these same steps to make the second top panel. I'm just going to say this again because I don't want anyone to make a mistake. One panel should have both female. The other panel should have both of the male. Let's go ahead and get our lock installed. For our female lock placement, you're going to align it lengthwise or height-wise, center between the magnetic snaps and the center of the top panel. But I do want you to note, depending on the size of your lock, you may need to adjust this position, okay? Also, please note that the top panel that has the female lock, those stud panels should have the hole punched, okay? The female lock, the stud panel should have the hole punched. Right now, I'm just showing you how this is going to be attaching in a minute. Now, when I got ready to do my male part of my lock, what I did was in this video, you're not seeing it, but I folded both of my pieces so that the raw edges were showing. And then, snapped it, and I reached through and drew, and that's how I found exactly where my male part of my lock was going to go, because like I said before, because of the size of my insect, and I didn't want the top little antennas to be going over the bag, it wasn't exactly in the middle. You're going to have to play around with it depending on your lock size. Once you've got your female installed, then you can go ahead, and you've installed the magnetic snaps on your other one, you can go ahead and snap those 2 top panels together and then use the placement of your female lock to find out where the male part of your lock needs to go. I hope that makes sense because, again, it may not be exactly centered If you have a small little lock, a little oval lock, then you won't have that problem. But if you're trying to be fancy, trying to be extra like me, you may need to adjust where your lock is, and just do your female side first. Add the magnetic snaps on your other top panel. Fold it down where the raw edges are, together, so that you can line those two pieces up and make sure that your male lock is going to go exactly where it needs to go to be centered through your female lock. Okay, so this is me showing you what I'm saying you should do, finally. I kind of did it. I had to go back and fix mine. I did not do my placement correctly. That's why I'm trying to tell you, please take the time to do the female first. Now take your second one, once you've installed your magnetic snaps, fold it over like that, and then line it up with your female lock to make sure that the male part of the lock is going through the center. Y'all, it's 5 o'clock. It's 5:55 a.m. over here, and Chewy is looking at me like, why are you disturbing my sleep talking on this mic? All right. Now, if you use a certain lock, like this one goes down to lock, make sure that direction is correct right now. I put mine in facing up, so I had to take it out. So just if you have any directional stuff, go ahead and make sure that it's going the right way. Now, we're going to be punching the holes. I think I just showed you that it's going to be 1/2 inch in from the side. Again, the top panel with the female lock, that's where you're going to be punching the hole. The panel with the male lock, that's where you're going to be installing the studs. Got it? And you're measuring in 1/2 inch for this part. Stud hardware goes on the stud panel with the male lock. Here we go. Measuring in 1/2 inch on all 4 of these pieces, okay? Because those little pieces sticking out, those are our stud panels. We're measuring in 1/2 inch and centered. And then we're doing either the stud or the hole. All right. You can go ahead and put them to the side and grab your main panel pieces. We're about to get those added. You can go ahead and add a label if you want to at this point, or you can do it after we add it. It doesn't matter. But right now, your main panel is right side facing up. And just grab one of your top panels. It doesn't matter. Just make sure that your magnetic snaps are facing up. You should be able to see that, okay? I matched them up by the center point. Again, I do both of mine at the same time. Once you've got them clipped together, we're going to be attaching them at, I believe, 1/8 inch seam allowance. We just basted them on. All right, looking good, looking good. Go ahead and grab your base piece, and we're going to be getting this attached to our 2 main panels. You should have already marked all of your midpoints. Now we're matching up the midpoints of our 2 main panels to our base. Okay, they're right sides touching. Once you've got them clipped together, we're going to be attaching them, and we're doing this at 3/8 inch seam allowance, okay? 3/8 inch. All right, now we're going to push our seam allowance down towards the base. And then we're going to get a top stitch, 1/8 inch seam allowance, and that top stitch is going to be on the base. All right, and we're just going to repeat the same thing to the other side, y'all. Get that second main panel added, again at 3/8 inch seam allowance. All right, now let's work on our piping. That's going to be on page 11 if you're following along in the pattern. All right, I already did one just to show what it looks like. We're going to be measuring in from the tip. We're measuring in 1.5 inch from both of the short edges. Go ahead and draw a line. All right, and then you're going to place your cording in there. Now, in the instructions, she does say that you can use double-sided tape or glue. I didn't use anything. I just folded it in. You know, whatever you feel is best, you can go ahead and do that. And then we're going to use a zipper foot to sew as close as we can to that cording. I didn't use a zipper foot because I was too lazy, but yeah, you should use a zipper foot. All right, now I'm just folding that in half so that I can find my midpoint. I'm going to make a little snip so I'll know where my midpoint is. Yep. Find those midpoints. Now we're going to add it to look how cute it looks already. Look how cute. All right, so we're going to get our piping added. We're going to match up the midpoint of the base and the midpoint of our piping, and the raw edges should be aligned with each other. Alrighty, so we are getting ready to attach our piping to our bag. Now, what I did was I went to the corners right there, all 4 corners, and I measured down 1 inch. Okay, you can make a mark, and then I put a little I did a little snip in the piping at that 1 inch mark, and that's just going to help it to bend out of the way because that's where we're going to be veering it off. Now, also, I always grab a staple, and right before it gets to the point where it's going to be veered off, I just do one little staple, and that's just because I don't like fussing and moving. I don't know. I like things to be easy. So I put it always staple at the very end just to hold it in place. You don't have to do that, but yeah. I did that on all 4 of the corners, and then I got it attached at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Once I've got it attached, I went ahead and just snipped off that little extra bit that's showing, like so. All right, and do use your zipper foot when you get that attached because you do want it to be, no, actually, when you attach it this time, you just attach it at an 1/8 of an inch. All right, now we're going to get our side pieces attached. Again, we should have our midpoints already marked, so we're going to match up those midpoints. They are right sides touching. And we're going to get them attached. Now you want to add a clip at that point right here, and then you want to grab the top corners and get those clipped together. Okay, so we do the bottom, and then we're doing both of the top sides, and now we're going to, go along the straight edges first to work our way so that the curve is the last thing that we are going to be clipping together. Again, we should have already drawn those lines at the top to prepare for our drop in. Now, sometimes, depending on your fabric, your interfacing, you may get a little bit of this extra buckling. If you want, you can just kind of fold it in like, almost like a little darts. What I do is I just trim that right off. It's fine. So I'm just showing you that I trim those little pieces off to get it out of the way. It's not a big deal. Don't freak out if you have a little extra material going on. It happens. Especially I used a heavy stabilizer in my entire bag. When you use I find that when you use a heavy, thick stabilizer, it doesn't allow any give. It doesn't allow any it doesn't. It's 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm tired. But what I'm saying is you may get some of that depending on the interfacing that you use because the material is stiff and it's not going to give that much away when you're getting into the corner. So if you need to trim it, just trim it off, not a big deal. Now we're going to add it. Now she wants us to get this added at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. I tried to do that, but because of my interfacing and everything, it was a little hard for me. So I decided to go ahead and add it at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance first, and then I went back and did a second pass at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and that made it a lot easier. So just depending on your material and your machine, you know, do what you got to do to make it work, honey. Okay, let's move on to the zipper pocket. Okay, here's a note. Leave your thread long and pull it to the back and tie it to avoid having back stitching on your zipper panel. It just always looks a little bit neater when you don't see that. I'm using white thread on a white material. I did back space. I mean back stitch. I don't care. All right, so you're going to place that 1.5 inch down from the top and centered, and I'm talking about that zipper panel. I use double-sided tape to attach it, and now we just need to get that material in the middle out of the way. You can use a seam ripper, scissors, whatever you need to do, but take your time because you want to make sure that you do not cut that zipper panel that's on the front of this lining. Again, we're using our lining panel, and we're attaching our zipper panel to that lining panel. All right, I'm just getting that material behind there cut out. Once you've done that, this is how I do my zipper pocket. I just kept one piece and I placed double-sided tape along the short edges. Okay, and this is the zipper pocket that's going to be going inside of that zipper box. All right, I'm going to grab my zipper and I'm just going to place it so the zipper pocket is right side facing up. The zipper tape is also right side facing up, and I'm just going to stick it on that tape. You don't have to use tape. You can baste it on if you like. All right. And she says to attach it at 1/4 of an inch with the 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Now we're going to do the same thing to the opposite side. So I'm just going to rotate that pocket, remove the backing from the double-sided tape. Pocket is still right side facing up. The zipper is also still right side facing up. Go ahead and line up the edges. And get that on. Press it. Come on, girl, get it together. Get it on there. All right, and now we're going to stitch it on at a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance again. Now that's going to be going inside. Okay, this is where I cut it so that I can open it up. Lay it flat in the position that you would place it in your zipper pocket panel, and then cut that bottom so that now you can open it up. Now, whenever we do zippers like this, I always find that the zipper doesn't lay flat. It bothers me. See that? Ugh, it gets on my nerves. And I need to place it in my zipper panel. And so what I do is I always just add a second little stitch right on top of that first stitch, just so it can lay flat. You don't have to do that, but I have to do it because, oh my God, it gets on my nerves trying to stuff it in that zipper panel, you know? So yeah, I'm just going to stitch that down really quick. It only takes a second. Got it. All right, and now I'm going to put double-sided tape along both of those edges, and that's just going to hold it in place when we put it in our zipper window. All right, go ahead and get it centered. This is me struggling to get it centered. All right, now we're going to add a top stitch around the inside window. All right, it's attached. We're going to flip it over to the back and we're just going to pull that down. And we're going to close this pocket. To do so, we're going to be sewing along the sides and the bottom. I like to sew it this way facing up just to make sure that I'm not, you know, I can catch everything. So down the side, the bottom, back up the other side. All right, let's do the slip pocket. Grab your slip pocket and fold it so that it's right sides touching. The two short edges should be touching. All right, and now we are going to add a stitch along the sides. We're stitching it at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Go ahead and give it a trim, especially on the corners, just to make it easier to turn it out, or, you know, make sure it looks nice when you turn it out. Get those corners good. All right, grab your slip pocket trim, and on the wrong side you're going to draw a line 1/2 of an inch down from the long edge. Place double-sided tape right above that line. And then you're going to just fold down to that line. Does anybody else struggle getting the backing of the double-sided tape off? Oh my God. All right. Oh my God, I should have edited that out. Who wants to watch me fold that down? Sorry about that. All right, go ahead and grab your slip pocket, and we're going to take that trim and just center it on the pocket. Our pocket is right side facing up, and our trim, the right side, is facing down. The raw edges are lined up. Okay, and we're going to stitch that on at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. This is a really cool way of adding the trim. This is my first time doing it like this, and I really, really like it, because usually I just do raw edges on the front and the back, and, you know, 25% of the time I miss it. So the way she does it, you can't miss it. So now you're going to just fold up and over that pocket. How cool is that? And now we're going to add a top stitch on this side, and there's no way you can miss anything because it's already attached. Genius. Now I'm going to go ahead and trim off my edge now. Get that out of the way. But yeah, isn't that so cool? Thank you, Tobi. It makes sense. It just makes sense. Oh my God, I just realized that's the same way that people do their binding, right? When they add the binding first. I've seen people mention it, but I didn't care enough to look into it. But now I just realized it's the same concept, right? When you do the binding. Yeah, it is. Okay. Alrighty, let's move on. I just had a revelation. We're gonna go ahead and get that slip pocket added. You're going to set it 1.5 inch from the top and centered. I did place double-sided tape along the sides and bottom, or at least the sides of my slip pocket, to keep it in place. There we go. And now I'm going to place it centered on that lining. All right, now we're going to just go and attach it by sewing along the sides and the bottom. If you want, you can add a rivet in the corners. I think that I did. I honestly don't remember, but you can if you want to. All right, let's do the divider pocket. It's going to be on page 20 if you are following along. Y'all, we're almost done. All right, here's another note for you. Oh, I mentioned that early. I interfaced my entire divider pocket, but the instructions don't do it that way. So the way she does it is draw a line. Well, you need to do this regardless. Draw a line 1 inch in and draw that from both short edges. Go ahead and do that. Just, I promise. Put double-sided tape in front of that line and then fold the edge to the line. All right, now if you're going to do it the way that she did it, measure 6.5 inches in from the raw edge. From the other side, you know, the other short edge, measure 6.5 inches in and draw a line. Now she gave you a template, a divider pocket template for the interfacing or stabilizing. You should definitely use a heavy stabilizer for this. Okay, you don't want your divider pocket all like flimsy. But anyway, draw a line there. Ignore that other line you see because that was a mistake. And now you're gonna place your stabilizer interfacing on that line. I'm not doing it because I don't have it, but I just drew that line to show you that's where you would place it. And then you would fold this in. It winds up being at the same mark. I drew a line at 1 inch, but the interfacing template that she gave you is going to end right there anyway, so it doesn't matter. You don't have to draw that line, but just know that you're going to be folding in just like you did the other side. Okay, bam. Now let's work on our, what are those called? Our little connectors. Make sure I use the right term. Our connector panels is what it's called in the pattern. Draw a line down the center long way. I'm adding double-sided tape and then I'm going to fold into that line. All right, go ahead and add a top stitch all around both of those, the entire perimeter. All right, let's go ahead and grab our swivel hooks and we're just going to run those connectors through them. I went ahead and just threw a clip on the edge to hold it, and then I basted it together. So what we're going to be doing is just sticking these connectors inside of our divider pocket. I don't know why I didn't show it, but I took my divider pocket and I folded it so that the short edges were touching, and then I measured in 2 inches, and that's where you place your swivel hook. Okay, so your divider pocket, you just close it so that wrong sides are touching. Take your swivel hooks, measure 2 inches in along the top, and that's where you're going to place your swivel hook. And when you place that swivel hook in there, you're just going to tuck it down as far as you can get it. Just tuck it in there. Okay. And then I'm adding clips just to kind of keep it straight. I don't want my swivel hooks, the connector, going from, you know, towards either side. So that's what I'm doing right now, just making sure that they stay straight up and down. All right, and now we're going to add a top stitch along the top and 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Perfecto. Alrighty. Now we're going to set one side edge of the divider pocket a 1/2 inch from the bottom edge of our lining pocket. We're going to be getting that divider pocket attached. Now, I don't know. I missed it. Okay, down there. You're supposed to measure 1/2 inch from that corner right there. I think it winds up being about the same, but yeah. All right, so we're gonna get that attached at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, and then do the same thing to the opposite side of the divider. Okay, measure 1/2 of an inch up from that corner and get it attached at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Once you've got that done, we need to attach the other lining piece, right? So go ahead and place your lining pieces so that they're right sides touching. And just go ahead and line them up. Just like that. All right, and this time we're going to be attaching them at, I believe, 1/2 of an inch. Let me make sure. No, at 3/8 of an inch. The second time that you attach, when you attach the second lining piece, you attach it at 3/8 of an inch. Now we're going to move on to the bottom. Get those clipped together and attach it at 3/8 of an inch as well. Once that's done, you're just going to pull open that corner piece. When you pull it open, your side seam should be matched up with your bottom seam. I like to open my seams when I add them together. Whatever is your preference, you can push one side to the left and push the other side to the right. It doesn't really matter. Okay, and now we're gonna get this sewn together at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance as well. Right there. Okay, y'all, it's time for final assembly. Like, we're almost done. It's on page 24 if you're following along. I know you ain't. I'm just kidding. I never follow along when I watch tutorials. I just but anyway, okay, so we're gonna go ahead and take off all of the double-sided tape that we should have already applied along the top of our lining and our main panels. I like to do my lining first just because if you're using canvas, it'll stay stuck a little bit longer than the exterior, and in my opinion, most times. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I am folding down to the line that we made earlier, and we did that for the lining and the exterior, right? They're both folded down, and we're about to put these babies together. So our exterior is right side facing out and our lining is wrong side facing out. And then we're going to place it inside. If you have a preference, if you like your zipper pocket, on the back of your bag, whatever, go ahead and align everything up right now the way that you like it. Now, when we attach these together, the part of the front and the back of the main panel that has those top panel pieces sticking out, we're going to be attaching that blindly, right? See? So I want to show you that I went ahead and put some double-sided tape on my lining just to kind of hold everything in place, because like I said, when we're top stitching that, we're not going to be able to see what we're doing. We just have to trust that we lined it up exactly. And I am going to tell you right now, it's a dangerous game that we play. Like when you can't see both of your top edges, man, it gets real crazy. You just have to pray that you're doing it. You did it right. What I should have done is taken a needle and stuck it through along the top to make sure that it was lined up exactly. But anyway, yeah, if you want to use some double-sided tape, go ahead and do that to make sure that it's not moving, and just take your time. Now I have a cylinder arm, so I am able to get into it. If you have a flatbed, you're probably gonna have a little bit, it's just gonna be a little bit of a struggle. It's doable, but you may need to add your top stitch from the lining facing up. Like right now, the exterior is facing upright and we're stitching on the outside of the bag. If you're having trouble, then you may need to stitch it from the inside of the bag And so just lay it where your needle foot is going down on your lining instead of your exterior. And I think that you'll be able to move it around a little bit better. But just take your time. You may need to hand stitch or hand crank over those corners. You got it. You know, top stitching is top stitching. There's nothing but me to do but to just encourage you to take your time, and you got it. But take your time when you place that lining inside of your exterior, because that part right here on this blind part, that's where, if there's going to be a problem, it's going to be on that part and also on the corners. I do recommend when you get to this part right here, that blind part, that you increase your top stitch to 1/4 of an inch and then go back to 1/8 of an inch when you're on the sides where you can see the actual tips. That's just what I would do if I did this again. When I got on that front and back panel where I'm stitching blindly, I would increase my top stitch to 1/4 of an inch, or, you know, a little bit more than 1/8, because as you can see, I'm going to show you, I did miss a piece right there in my corner. I missed a piece of my lining, and also over here I missed another piece. I don't care, I'm gonna tell you, I missed it. Ish happens. So because I'm using white thread on this white bag, it's not that visible. I'm gonna add another stitch. I don't feel like going back and stitching over this and trying to catch it. I'm just going to add a second stitch 1/8 of an inch below that first one, and that's going to catch everything that I missed. And I'm okay with having 2 stitches along the top. That's just me, you know, it's not a big deal to me, and it gives it a design element. I did that on purpose. Who gonna check me, boo? So yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm going to go back and add that second top stitch, and everything was fine. But only increase, this is me saying, if you increase to 1/4 of an inch top stitching, like I mentioned earlier, only do that on the part where you're sewing blindly. On the edges, you can keep it at 1/8. All right, let's do the handle. It's on page 25. Grab your handle, and you're going to measure in from both sides 3/8 of an inch. And then you're going to draw a line down the center long way. Also measure in 1 3/4 of an inch from one side and place your handle interfacing there. All right, and then you're going to go ahead and put double-sided tape on either side of those lines. Go ahead and remove the tape. Now, there's some stabilizing going on right here. The stabilizer should go, place the stabilizer 1 3/4 of an inch from one short edge. I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that. Okay. Once you've got your stabilizer on, then you're going to fold your raw edges down to that line on the middle. And then grab your 2 D-rings and go ahead and get them on, one on each, coming in from each edge. If you've ever made like a wristlet strap, this is basically what we're doing. So now we're going to grab our short edges, and they're going to be right sides touching. And we're going to be attaching them on that line that we drew. Okay, so the right sides of this material is touching. And then we're just going to add a stitch, and now we're going to trim that off at an angle. And now we're going to just go ahead and fold that in to that midline, just like we did for the rest of it. So now it's completely folded in all of the way around. I'm going to pull my D-rings so that they're, you know, on either side of this handle piece. She said that she wants you to take the piece where that seam allowance is and put it about 3/4 of an inch from one of the D-rings. It doesn't matter which one. I put mine in the middle just because I did. But in the instructions, she does say to take that seam and place it about 3/4 of an inch from one of the D-rings on the edge. And now we're just going to clamp these together so that we can add a top stitch around the entire thing. I've seen a couple of people do handles this way, and I think it's a really cute way to add a handle without having to worry about exposed edges, you know? Okay, so we're sewing around the entire thing at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, and once you get that top stitch on your handle, you can attach it to the connectors that are coming out of your divider pocket, and you're done. Or I'm done. If you would like to make a strap, you can. For me, a bag like this, I prefer a chain. So I just went and grabbed the chain and connected it to that connector, and I am finished, and I absolutely love this bag. I hope that you enjoyed it, making it as well. Hope you love yours like I love mine. Oh my gosh, Tobi, what a great pattern. If you want to make the strap the way that she does, you can follow along on page 27. It's a pretty neat looking strap. But yeah, congratulations if you've made this bag. Post it. I would love for you to tag me and tag my tutorial. If you found this tutorial helpful, then support my channel by giving it a thumbs up. You can share, you can subscribe, all of the things. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.